we going to do today?
Watch Channel 0!
So what's Channel 0, guys?
Explain this, because I'm going to go
How did we hear about this? Oscar?
So back in episode, I'm going to say 6 of the podcast, we talked about Candle Cove, a creepypasta, which is pretty much an urban legend throughout the internet. We talked about the story of Candle Cove. And, believe it or not, they actually made a TV show about Candle Cove. And it's coming out on Sci-Fi today.
So our good friend Furby, hi Furby, knows that we love creepypastas. And so since creepypasta are this generation's campfire tales for the internet, we're here watching this new episode on Sci-Fi. So what are our expectations?
Pretty high. I'm hoping, they go right into the gate, running and gunning, explaining at least something that we liked a whole lot about. That's what grasped me about the story.
Well, I've seen some of the trailers, and they look pretty scary. There's like that one guy that's made entirely of teeth.
Oh, God,
So,
yes.
Just mentioning it, it's just like making my skin crawl.
So the first time I had ever heard of this story was on the YouTube channel, The Little Fears. Then I told you about it. And we've spread it throughout there, So every time we hear a story, or not a story, but a show that someone talks about when they were little, this is the first thing I think of. And you're going to put a link below to the original creepypasta?
Down below.
Perfect. So basically we're talking to those of you who already know what Candle Cove is.
We can probably also put a link to the story by The Little Fears down the doobly-doo.
Yep. And so, in my opinion, she reads it the best. It's like the most creepy. She's very good on her diction. She's very good on the way she presents it. So it really gets the creepy factor across. So here we go. We're about to start it.
And we're back. So, thoughts, expectations, were they met? Did we have expectations going in? How do we feel?
Well, I was just hoping that they would deal with the whole creepypasta in the first episode, and you find out more about it in the season, which it seems like that's what they did. Mm-hmm. They just went about it in a different way, because the original, is told like it's on a forum, and this is like a guy revisiting his past because his past is haunting him.
It did, I guess, answer all the questions that I kind of wanted. Like you were saying, it was built in a forum, so it kind of made us all chuckle, because from the original creepypasta, it mentions the original postings' names, like that the main character.
I can't remember any of the other names off the top of my head. I probably wouldn't have remembered Mike Painter off the top of my head until his name was said.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what added more for me, and it's a little weird because there's videos out there that portray Candle Cove, that the way that they portrayed it in the show. I was going to say movie. That they portrayed it in the show is exactly like, I was like, well, they need to me, I felt I wanted more. And that's what they did. They kind of satisfied me a little bit, and then they added more dialogue. They actually played out a couple of the scenes that were kind of stated in the forum, and it was kind of creepy. We got a painted picture of every single character.
Well, yeah, and I guess those were my expectations too. Like, you expect Calliope music, you got Calliope music. You expect to see what the ship looked like, but the way they described it looks pretty much the way they made it look, which is awesome.
So I think the way that they kind of changed the original story for the show works, because obviously I feel like the story goes based off of kind of like a nostalgic kind of investigation where, it's like whenever you feel like you watched a show that not a lot of people watched when you're a kid, you kind of try and go back and try and find it on YouTube or like look for other people talking about it. And if you don't find it, you kind of start to wonder, well, what happened? Did I just imagine it, the whole thing myself? So the original story is written in that sense. The show is shown a little differently.
The show starts off like kind of like the way it did.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, there is that scene where they're all, like, friends from the past, and they're all sitting around dinner and talking about, oh, do you remember Candle Cove? And it's almost like there's this hush, and almost like...
Yeah.
I half expected someone to say, I thought we agreed never to talk about it again.
Yeah. Kind of like there's this background, hidden, supernatural trauma that they're all kind of trying not to talk about.
Yeah.
And I feel like...
But yet that's what all brings them together.
Yeah, and I feel like the difference between the show and the original story was, for the original story, it's like, oh, well, y'all remember this? Like, hey, you remember this? And then it's like that twist is like, whoa. I feel like if you haven't read the original story, there's almost like an underlying, like, as you're watching it, there's like this underlying, like, suspense of what Candle Cove is and, like, why isn't it always turning off. So I feel like the twist kind of not loses it. I feel like it would still be a twist if I hadn't read it, but it's still kind of like, oh, okay, that's what we're dealing with, And it's all like this, like you said, Jenny, like it's all this, they're all trying to, like they're talking about it in the sense of it's this underlying thing that's haunting them. It's not something that they're looking back on fondly. It's definitely something that they're trying to almost not talk about.
The actual creepypasta, the original creepypasta, what makes it creepy is the fact that it sounds like something that could be sinister, and then in the end you find out that it very well could be sinister, because there's no such thing as like different people in different areas who've never met before all of a sudden imagining the same thing, having the same traumatic experiences, like never wanting to watch it again. It's just kind of like, what the hell? Is this some sort of weird experiment? Or, like, what the hell's going on,
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, it made me wonder if, I was a PBS kid when I was little. Like, all of the, I watched a lot of PBS. So it's kind of like a lot of shows that you watch in your area when you're growing up. You watch them not at the same time that other kids watch them. Do you know what I mean? Like, whenever we were watching Sesame Street, it might have been at a different time you were watching Sesame Street because your PBS station might have chosen it differently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, someone could have made a children's show in that area and have shown it here, and we would have never known about it.
Yeah.
We would have never known about it. That's what's creepy about it. That's what's creepy, like, oh my god, what the hell were we watching?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, it's always one of those things where you look back on your childhood, and you wondered, that was weird, and then when you really analyze it, you're like,
yeah,
that shouldn't have ever happened, kind of a thing.
All right. Do you feel like there's any outcome of the show that if it does happen, you'd be disappointed with?
Just going over... I'm actually reading the creepypasta right now. So, going over it, there's nothing that, to me, reading it, getting a refresher of it again and trying to understand. Of course, we were trying to name the ship. His name is Laughingstock.
Laughingstock.
Mm.
I knew it had a name.
So, the person that we were like, oh, that was Pirate Percy... They were like, oh, well, that's the, they were saying Pirate Percy, but it was actually Horace the Horrible.
Horace the Horrible.
They're saying that there's a lot of things to the creepypasta that they did change. So I'm not too distraught about it. It kind of, it's to me, what it's kind of weird, what I kind of feel like they had this appeal to it, because originally in the story, it's like in the 70s. That's when it's kind of shot. But in the show, they're reminiscing of 88.
Yeah, that number, that year is constant. We could have a drinking game on how many times that the year was mentioned in the show. We were saying in between, during the commercial breaks, is I feel that for a show that's going to be 12 episodes long, you said?
Mm-hmm.
For a season that's going to be 12 episodes long, they need to deal with the initial story in the first episode in order to actually progress, to make this different than from what we all know. Because... Are you going to jump? Because
You're ruining the shot.
When you say because, it makes you want to jump. Because
if everyone who already knows the story is going to be like, well, I really came away with nothing about this. You know what I mean? I came away knowing nothing more than I already knew. And in order for it to be a good show, you need to learn new stuff.
So I think, yeah, I guess I would run with that and pretty much say, I mean, this just being the first episode, I guess not knowing, and I want to know if anybody who has watched it, you know, any of our subscribers, anybody, of course, of our podcast listeners, that would be, you know, anybody, I guess, who's not familiar with creepypastas. Like, I guess I'm going to go to one of our fans, Yvonne. She was explaining to this story in the car, and she was just not getting grasp of it exactly. So I was telling her about it, and it's kind of weird because we have those listeners who don't know what this particular story is, so you have to sum it up in that kind of shape and form. So I'm kind of wanting to see exactly how it reached that audience, and if it affects them enough to keep watching.
All right. So again, predictions about the show. Do you guys feel like?
Oh yeah, we didn't even answer your question. I'm sorry.
do you feel like that there's going to be an outcome that
this could have that
you'd be disappointed with?
I really don't want it to be like, Mike, it was all in your head. You were the one who killed your brother. Don't you remember? Mm-hmm. I don't want that. I don't want it to be like he was the one who was so bullied or so traumatized when he was little that he imagined it all on his own, and he was telling all of his little friends about it, and when you're little, you know, you're influenced so much, so it's like when your friend is telling you to watch something, look, watch it, you're mm-hmm. gonna pretend you're watching it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want it to like it be in the end like, we were just humoring you, Mike, you were nuts, you know? Yeah. I don't want it to be like that.
It's all in your head, Mike.
I guess I kind of don't want it to follow that same aspect. I don't want it to follow like I'm gonna throw some spoilers out there, of course. I don't want it to be like Fight Club. I don't want it to be like A Beautiful Mind. I don't want it to be, you know, I don't want it to be.
You don't want it to be like Saint Elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't want it to be like Jacob's Ladder. I don't. That's my whole thing. Is I don't want it to be like that. I want them to follow up with a story. Another thing I kind of have in the back of my mind is I don't want them to hint at next season. I want them to keep this encased, kind of like how what's his name from American Horror Story does his stuff.
Ryan Murphy.
Ryan Murphy never lets anything escape, even if it's like a teaser. You know, he's got, of course, you know, whatever coming up. But I don't want them to go, well, this is what's going to happen in next season or next episode. I don't want them to stray away from the original story. I want them to keep this encased in a little tight briefcase or tight safe and just keep it its original story and not.
I just hope it doesn't have like, not to spoil the Silent Hill series, but I've kind of noticed all the Silent Hill games from like, I'd say Origins and on kind of almost had the same story where the protagonist comes back to like their childhood home or goes to Silent Hill, and somehow they've just forgotten their past and have been to blame for everything that's gone on. I just don't want that to be this.
You don't want it to be like, oh, it's erased and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I want it to be paranormal. I mean, it already looks like it is paranormal. I don't know. What would be the most effed up, in your opinion?
Aliens, yeah.
Effed up in a good way or a bad way?
Bad way.
Yeah, it'd be like...
I'm not a huge fan of, like, aliens
to
stuff.
me, if the answer is aliens, it needs to be aliens from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Yeah, I just don't want it
like
to be...
that episode of The Twilight Zone where the aliens are, like, checking out this neighborhood and seeing how they all self-destruct each other.
Well, I like that.
That's cool.
Yeah. And in that episode was cool because it wasn't like the aliens were aliens. They were just, you know, people watching.
Right.
They were just
observing.
Yeah.
Like if this was a weird freaking experiment for aliens.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I guess it's at this point. Are we all thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down?
On the count of 3, we'll do it. Ready? Everybody with their left hand. Ready?
Oh,
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
All right.
And we're done. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure
Ask
you like
us
and
again
subscribe.
in 3 episodes.
Yeah, we'll do the 3-episode test, and we'll tell you more or less whether our thumbs have gone down or up, right? Or stay the same. All right. I'm Oscar.
I'm Jenny.
No bugs.
And this is Iggy.
Hi, Ziggy. Thanks for watching, guys. Nope. Ziggy.
That doesn't mean for you to know. Don't you even
She's
dare.
like, oh, we're starting again?
So I'm back. Okay.
No.
Do it. Do it.
No.
Do
Nope.
it.
Ah, you ruined the shot. You're all up in the mic. Okay. That was on film. That's gonna. I'm gonna put that. I'm gonna try to put that in there.
That should be like a little thing, like at the very end.
You good? You okay?